Welcome back to the House Really podcast. I'm here with Keely Spring. Hello.
Hi, Brittany. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good.
Good. We met a while back because you connected with me and invited me onto your podcast, Therapeutically Aligned, which is a lovely way for people to get to know clinicians.
Oh,
And you do such a great job at interviewing and really getting clinicians to explain how they work. And like, it's basically the podcast that I think if anyone wanted to find their person to work with, this would be it.
I love that. Thank you. That's a
Of
great point.
course.
And that's,
Of course.
really the catalyst for it was, hearing so many people. Therapy, I think, can be such a unknown. Where do I start? What kind of techniques do I want? What's kind of the best therapist for me? And so this was kind of my answer to that question.
I love that. It's better than scrolling through a Psychology Today and thousands of profiles and maybe watch a video or two, or it's a picture of someone from 10 years ago, whatever it might be. So, yeah, this is a way more modern, relatable version.
Very true. Very true. Or at least that's the hope.
Yes, yes, you nailed
And
it.
people, thank you. I was trying to get people too from all across the country, which is, you're part of that as well, because you and I are in very different parts of the country.
We're about as far as I think you can get. Almost. Yes. California to North Carolina, which is a beautiful thing of the internet because I mean, we connected on LinkedIn, and I feel like that there's this orbit that we're both in on LinkedIn, which is kind of interesting. It's like having a pod. So, yeah.
For, for sure. I think I will say you're one of my favorite things so far to come out of the podcast for me personally is just kind of the connection and being able to kind of somebody who's in a very similar space that I can kind of lean on for like, hey, have you had this experience? It's helpful.
Totally.
Helpful.
I appreciate you too because trying to be also a video editor and a podcaster and doing all of the work yourself as also while running a practice is something. It's a whole nother beast. And I tell people it is a labor of love, as we've talked about before, and it's work. It is a hobby work thing to have.
This is very true. Very true. Yes. I very much appreciate you. And I'm excited. This is actually the first time I think I've been on the other side of a podcast. So
Well, welcome. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Great. Because, all right. So, a little bit about you. You're in California.
I am. I am. So
Yeah.
you want the high level background of who I am?
Yeah. Give it all.
So I'm located in San Francisco Bay Area, and I went to undergrad in LA at USC. I got a master's in communication in Boulder. I did some work abroad in Australia doing communications work. Yeah. And then my visa expired, and my sister had just had a baby, so I moved to the Bay Area because she was in the Bay Area, and that he's now in college, so it's been a minute. I went to corporate America. I was doing internal communications and a lot of leadership work with leaders in the organization around communication. And then I had an epiphany, hated the work. Not so much the work with the people, but just the kind of corporate sitting in a cubicle kind of grind of it. So I quit. I got a second master's degree in counseling psychology and opened a private practice, and then also started coaching leaders, trying to help the people that I had left, kind of behind in a previous life. So that's the Cliff Notes version.
I love that Cliff Notes version, but also I'm just imagining the transition from going from corporate life into then going to grad school, particularly for counseling psychology, and then opening up your own private practice. So it sounds like you're pulling from your experience in corporate world and then maybe running a business in that way, then into the clinical setting too.
Yeah, I definitely think it informs how I am as a clinician. I also think it informs the people that are drawn to me because I do have a corporate background and I do kind of, I don't know, you can't really get rid of those things once they're kind of, ground into you. I don't know how to say that nicely.
You can't not talk about your KPIs and your CAC and what the ROI is.
Yeah, yeah. Or even like the more subtle things, which is kind of, I'm sure what we'll dive a little bit more into, but it's like those nuances of what happens in corporations, and I think, having been there and experienced it, that's really where, um, my mind goes is like, you can talk all the KPIs you want, but if you're not happy or you don't have employees that are happy, then you've got a bigger problem.
What was it that you were seeing in corporations that maybe led to solving some of these problems?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think there is this ripple effect that happens with leadership. And if you have an effective leader, you have good ripple effects and you have a lot of employees kind of downstream of that are getting the benefits. That said, if you have leadership that is lacking in some way, you're going to see high turnover rates. You're going to see a lot of problems that are happening in the organization. And so for me, I worked for both amazing leaders and horrible leaders. And yeah, I think that was kind of one of the things for me that always kind of stuck with me was I can really empathize with the struggle of the leader, but also the struggle of the employees that are under the leader. And I will say that actually, just to give a little shout out to my dad, when I was as soon as I turned 16, basically, I had to work at he was a president of an aerospace company. And so I had to work and show up. And he was actually one of the most effective leaders I ever saw. So I kind of started out with this model of what great leadership is. And his secret sauce was really about the employees, it was about people. He knew everybody's name, he knew their families, he really kind of got to know the people and they would go to bat for him every time. So I kind of started with that model of like, this is what leadership should be. And then I kind of saw through my own experience that that is not what it always is. And, sometimes it's just about the tools that the leader wants to be that way, but they can't. And so, for me, it's more kind of being on the receiving end really kind of, made me passionate about trying to fix what I can.
You got firsthand experience starting at a pretty young age and what good leadership looked like.
Yes. Yeah. My dad was an amazing he's still around, love him. But
Mhm.
he was
Yeah.
a really, really effective leader, like super effective to the point that his company got bought out by another company and they brought somebody in from HR to get some dirt on him to get him out. And the employees actually went to bat for him. The HR person pulled him aside and was like, I've never seen that. Like they're mad at us for how we're treating you. So he was quite effective at what he did.
What do you think were some of his skill sets that made him effective?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think it always goes back for me, to one of those concepts that nobody cares what you know unless they know how much you care. So he was really good. Like, he took companies from bankruptcy to, you know, very, very good business wise, multi-millions. But ultimately, what it came down to is that the employees knew that he cared about them. He wanted to see them succeed. He knew their names. He would, it was a manufacturing plant in the back and then like kind of a business office in the front. And every day he would kind of like walk around and talk to the employees and get to know them and joke around with them. And, people saw that and got that he actually cared. And so they wanted to show up for him in a way that, helped drive the business model forward, but was also kind of just because he was invested in them as a human.
Um, that I guess it's almost like his KPIs were based on how well people were treated.
I think internally, I don't know,
Yeah.
I think he would say that now. I don't know. I'll ask him, but I think for him it was just instinctual. I don't know that, I don't know that it was some sort of master plan. It was just like who he was very well suited for leadership and engaging employees. Because that's actually, if you look at like drivers of turnover rates and employee engagement, it's all things like recognition and delegation and people feeling like they've got some sort of stake and that they're seen in the business.
For sure. Yeah. It's like the self determination theory where it's you have to have autonomy, relatability, and competency. That if
Mhm.
those three things are endorsed in an organization, then employees are more likely to thrive and be happy. And also, then therefore, have more stake in the company to want to do a good job and bond with each other and all the things that come with that.
Yeah, 100% for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So you took notes from him, and then it sounds like made it into your career path.
Yeah, and I think in a roundabout way, certainly, as I kind of shared my my path.
Yeah.
I remember when I was first getting my hours towards licensure, one of my first supervisors, when I told him, well, like, I kind of want to do like coaching for, people in corporations and stuff. And he was like, wait till you get licensed so that they don't come after your license. He's like, you could get in trouble if you're not showing that you're still learning. So you could potentially get your license in trouble. So he said, wait, but then kind of do what you want. That said, that's kinda what I did, is, like, I kinda always had it in the back of my mind, and then what happened was, once as soon as I got licensed, I was talking to another colleague of ours. I don't know if you've met Michelle Horton, but,
Yeah.
she's another clinician here that, did, leadership and executive coaching for a company that nobody had heard about at the time, which was BetterUp. Now they're this, billion-dollar company, and so I was one of their original coaches. Like, I was kind of on the early end of their coaching. I got a job, and so I started the leadership path, and it all those pieces kind of started coming together of, this feels right, and it's just kind of this extra piece to what I do, but that's always been there.
Yeah. The When you think about leadership coaching or executive coaching, what are some of the common problems that people are seeking these services for?
Yeah, it's a complicated answer, I think. Because what I would say is anybody can be a leader. An individual contributor can be a leader. So leadership coaching can include a wider range of people. People that want to lead, but they don't necessarily want to advance their careers to be the C-suite, executive. Um, Here in the Bay Area, I know I've mentioned this to you before, but we have so many startups and things that titles really don't mean that much. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that are like, "Oh yeah, I'm a principal, blah 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 blah." I'm like, "What does that mean?" And they're like, "I don't know. Sounded good. Thought it'd be good in your resume."
I made the like button at Facebook 15 years ago and I became the lead product liker. Like,
Right? Exactly, exactly.
uh-huh.
And so I think executive is a term that gets thrown around. I would argue that a lot of people see executives as this like C-suite, but really executives, depending on the size of the company or where the company is kind of in their growth, could be a managing director, could be, anybody kind of really in that management tier consider themselves an executive. So when we're looking at like, what are you coaching for? Um, I would say that, it depends. So if a executive is coming to you for coaching, but they have a very specific thing, usually what it is, they get some sort of feedback, they're having high turnover rates, they're trying to figure out what's going on with, they're looking, what I find with people in the higher levels is they're looking at it from more of a KPIs or like a, company statistics model of what we're, and so they're trying to almost like hack the answer of like, what do I need to do to make this better? The reality is that the answer lies in leadership, which is more of a foundational piece. And so where I would say leadership is, it's more about how am I communicating? How am I showing up for people? Am I giving people opportunities to have delegation and recognition for the work that they're doing? Am I building an executive presence or something that I can be proud of? Especially again, Bay Area, tons and tons of startup founders who are like, well, I wear a hoodie or wear a t-shirt and, I don't think the board takes me serious. And it's like, yeah, well, why would they? They're 20, 30 years older than you being like, what are you doing? Right. So I think it does depend on kind of what you're talking about in terms of, is that title like a legitimate title and where does it fall within the organization? And again, anybody can have leadership skills, but executives are kind of more that management upper echelons, but not necessarily C-suite.
Basically, you are doing something where you're leading a team, leading people. You have people that you're going to be dealing with interpersonally in the workplace.
Yes. I would say
Yeah.
it's more that executive coaching. And I will say that, some executive coaches I see, they're very strategic about certain pieces, right? Like, this is to get bought out in the company. I would also say that in some of those higher levels of executive coaching, peer advisory groups are actually a really better fit sometimes for that because they get a lot of peers around them that are also dealing with that type of situation. And so they can kind of bounce off ideas of people within their similar type organization.
For sure. Have you seen the groups called Hampton?
Mm-mm.
It's started by this guy named Sam Parr, who started The Hustle. He does the My First Million podcast, but he basically calls them business group therapy for founders, executives, and you have to have made like 3 million in revenue or something to be able to join the community. So that it's basically a peer group where everyone's either been there, can help each other out, lend a hand, lend advice, lend resources. And it, again, like kind of what's marketed as business group therapy for leaders and founders, which I personally love. I think it's great. And of course, if someone's going to market it as that it's going to be X type of like quote unquote therapy, I'm all in. So because it's I'm like, well, who's taking our field and making it into something else? And so I think that's always an interesting interplay,
Uh-huh.
particularly because it is going to be more based in hey, here's someone who has been there that's going to be able to lend you the hand of where you want to go. Whereas maybe coaching is kind of like the inner workings of people, and that's more like we have a strategy to help you get to the next million and get to the next stage of your company or your personal career growth.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm gonna have to look that one up. You called it the Hamptons? Hamptons?
Hampton. It's joinhampton.com
Okay.
to if anyone's interested or intrigued by this.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah.
Years ago, I was hired by another, which didn't work out, but to do peer advisory groups for small businesses, and that's really where I kind of got the model and was like, oh, this does really make a lot of sense for exactly the type of stuff you're talking about, right? Like a
Mhm.
coach like me is not somebody who's going to help you figure out how to get to your next million necessarily. There certainly are coaches that are about scaling or certain things like that, but I would argue that, especially in these executive levels, you need somebody who's scaled to that level or somebody who has kind of had the failings and the successes so that they can help kind of guide what those might be.
Yeah. So when you said like the peer advisory group and having that kind of model,
Uh-huh.
what have you taken from that that has informed your work?
Well, I think it's a great question. I don't know that I've ever like put it into words necessarily. I definitely got a thicker skin doing that work briefly. Um, and I got some great colleagues out of it that are amazing. But um, I think it really helped even, I've always been really clear, and I think actually Better Up really helped me of like what is coaching, what is therapy. Like I'm really pretty boundaried about like what is the what is the thing I can provide or help with. Like I'm fairly clear about it at this point, and like where therapy ends, coaching begins, all those kinds of questions. um I think this was another layer of like, yes, there is this element that I cannot provide. Like I don't know how to scale from 3 million to 5. You're going to need somebody who's done that before, knows how to do that, and so for me I think it was more about the questions, but the reality is like all the coaching was very much the same. Like all the people in my cohort were like, this is like literally what you do all the time, Keely. And I'm like, yeah, because I kept excelling at the coaching part. I was like, this is great, but like, yes, I'm not like like one of the guys that I love, this guy, Jay Mancini. He's amazing. He's a Vietnam vet, but he now runs one of these groups, and he's a real estate tycoon who built, like Facebook buildings and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, somebody like Jay can help you scale at that level. Somebody like me, can help you work on those internal pieces that are getting in your way.
Sure. How do you differentiate between therapy and coaching?
Great question. So the way I generally explain this is there can be overlaps in the tools. So if we're talking about anxiety at the job, I'm going to probably give you ideas that are similar to what a therapist or me as a therapist would give you in therapy because it's about the anxiety in the moment. That said, we're coaching, we're talking about future, like present and future facing. I don't really want to talk to you about what happened in the past, or, there might be a little flavor of that of like, oh, well, in this past, my boss and I had this conversation or whatever, but it's a lot more strategic. We're present focused as well as future focused. For therapy, I'm looking at all that as well as all the past. So I do have people that do coaching with me, but within the therapy lens, but they're in California, where I'm licensed. So they'll come to me, but they'll have something that has a little bit more coaching flavor to it. And so I'll put my coaching hat on and we'll kind of strategically look at that before kind of pivoting back to some of those more, where does this come from? What's getting in your way? The patterns and the beliefs and the behaviors. Another example is like cognitive distortions. I teach people in coaching and therapy about cognitive distortions because they show up in both settings. It's not, you're human all the time. So, the way you think about things and what gets in your way is going to happen whether you're at the job or you're at your house. So some of the tools again might be similar, but the what we're focusing on is not. We're just kind of more limited, I think, with coaching, but you get people that are much more targeted. I would also say it's much more limited. So when I worked for BetterUp, they would have contracts with people for like a year. I found coaching for a year is not effective. People, I mean, it just was not a useful. What I found was people do 3 and 6 month intervals, and those are really kind of where you get the most bang for your buck. So I do think of coaching as much more time limited. It is much more strategic. It is much more tactical. I'm going to send you home with homework. You're going to do the homework, or, versus in therapy, sometimes it's like people don't do the homework. And then we talk about why you didn't do the homework and, all those kinds of things. With coaching, it's kind of like, if you want to reach these goals, we're going to have to do these steps, period.
Sure. It's it sounds way more, I'll say, behavior based in a way, in the sense that you have goals that you want to hit, and it sounds like the as from the client side, they're coming to you to say, I'm stuck here and there is a targeted goal that I want to hit. It's like similar where I say people who are running marathons are going to periodize their training. They're not going to be trying to run a marathon for a year. They're going to do it in 3 or 6 month intervals. So it very much is what is your quote unquote marathon, or what is your goal? How long do you want to take to train for it and get there? And how can we help support that?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. It's a good analogy.
Yeah. And then in therapy land, it's more like this is maintenance. You can go casually run, you can do whatever. You can hit it hard one day and hit soft the next. It doesn't matter. It's like you got all the time. I mean, I say no goal. There are goals for people, but the level of gleaning insights can be never ending, as we know. So if that's what people are seeking therapy services for, kind of what you mentioned, it's like we're going to get into what are the patterns, where does that come from, you're deepening that, and then those are going to be what informs you into how maybe your behavior changes or what decisions you want to make next.
Yes. Yes. I know that you work with relationships as well. This is another example. Like I had somebody back when I was working in Better Up Days who was like, I want to have coaching around my relationship. There are coaches that do that, certainly. But that's not the coaching that I was providing to her. And she really wanted to look at like the patterns of why nobody wants her sleeping on their couch anymore. And, some of these, things that were more like interpersonally based, deeper, issues. And that person definitely got mad at me because I was like, that's not coaching, that's therapy. If you want that, great. But you want to dive into like these patterns that are deeply entrenched that are impacting now. But, we can't coach you out of that necessarily because we don't have what's going on underneath what that is. Versus like if somebody's coming to me about work, there's a situation usually,
Mhm.
and they want to work towards something to fix it.
Sure. When people are coming to you about work, what do you do with it? Because I sometimes find myself going, so are we managing through or quitting your job? Like, to a degree, I'm kind of like,
All or nothing.
which all or nothing, which path do we go down? I don't know.
Um, well, I think it's complicated nowadays, especially with AI, and we're seeing shifts and people are getting, at least again here in the Bay Area, there's definitely a collective kind of like, uh-oh, what's going on here? So I don't know, to answer the question of like, what is the core question? Like, what do I focus on at the job?
Yeah, like when people are coming to you and they're like, I'm so stressed with work. And
Mhm.
how do you start to work with that? Because it might be that they're maybe they are probably in an executive position in our company. And
Mhm.
it's I've worked so hard for this and I've hit the milestones. I've gotten where I want to be and I'm burning to the ground now, but I'm getting paid really well. And I have some of this flexibility because I've been there a long time, but do I still actually want it? Like maybe there's some confliction and ambivalence around the do I stay, do I go
Yeah. Yeah.
mindset around work.
Uh, Oftentimes I hear this referred to as golden handcuffs.
Yes.
Um, so yes, this comes up often. I would say that the tools would actually look very familiar to you, Brittany, as a therapist. So we would look at values, like what do they value about work? Are they living their values? Are they aligned with their values? Does the company align with those values? If not, where are those, missteps or disconnects? Can we find something that is more aligned to them? Um, Sometimes it's about skills. So you have to kind of tease out if it's about skills building or something like they want to get to the next level of their career, but they're feeling stuck. And we can look at, okay, well, you're missing this kind of skill set. How do we find that? Well, we're looking at people around you, other people that have that or have gotten to a place in their career. So there's usually markers that we can kind of look to say, to tease out if it's actually like a bad fit with the company or if it's just like they're just kind of at a plateau and feeling kind of meh about it. I think there's room to wiggle each way depending. And then, one of the things I actually love to do with people too is I'll have people do an energy audit. So I will have them for like a week track what are they spending their time on and I have them bucket it. So like if you're emailing, it's not like I spent 30 minutes, 20 minutes, it's like I spent 5 hours on email. I spent 3 hours in meetings, whatever. And then I have them list if it's a priority and what, kind of where it sits on the priority scale. And then I will have them do a plus or a minus. Does it drain me or does it fill me with energy? And then what we do, as I talk a lot about, is like work the edges. How do we work the edges around things? Because the reality is a lot of people need a job. They need income. They have families. They have, mortgages and car payments and all the things. So just quitting is not always an option, but we can start to help people feel less stuck with what options they do have and tease out like, again, is it the stay or go? And then there's choices within there to be made, timing, direction, all that kind of stuff. And the more that we figure out what's kind of going on for them, what's getting coming up as they're upset about work, then we can figure out what's that path they actually want to go.
Oh, I love this as a framework. Okay, so when you're telling people to work the edges, where are those edges? Like where are they beginning in working that?
Well, it really depends on the person. It's hard to
Sure.
say, depending, but like let's take the person that's burnt out, right? So I might do an energy audit with somebody who's burnt out, and the point of the energy audit is not to add because people be like, I can't add another to do. And it's like we're talking like 5 minute, like this is a very quick thing, but we're just trying to gather data. I did have one person do it for months and months and months because he likes spreadsheets and he was like, this is great data. I was like, it is, but I've never seen anybody do that. Um, but so say you're burnout, what we're working the edges is we're looking at that energy audit and we're saying like, okay, I'm in 8 meetings a day. Those are all 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, when am I actually doing work? Sometimes that's a conversation with leadership about like, can I delegate some of these meetings to somebody else to go to? Or, are these ones less important? Or can we rethink the structure of this so that people aren't just attending endless meetings? Sometimes people don't have wiggle room there. Okay. Am I like, this is where perfectionism comes into play, which is another one of my niches, kind of both spheres is am I spending a lot of time on like an email? Like, am I just sitting there cycling through the email over and over and over again? Um, am I noticing the things that are going well? Am I just focused on the negative things? So sometimes I'll have people at the end of the day notice the positive things too. So we start to kind of balance the burnt out feelings with like, oh, but yeah, actually I did a really good job at that presentation, or I had a really good conversation with that colleague. And those start to kind of work these edges around time and energy and kind of how you're spending your time and what you're focusing on to then kind of get some traction and some leverage about where to go.
Mhm. I like that. So it's basically it's that saying, what gets measured gets managed. And when you're going with what is it that we're measuring so that you can start with a place on what to change. So if it is, I am a perfectionist and I'm spending 30 minutes on an email like I might have done this morning, is it kind of then going into what has happened? You're spending so much time doing this. Like, what are the inner workings of that? And how can we shift that? How can we maybe change the meaning of how important that is that sending that email is and like why it doesn't need to be perfected kind
Yep.
of framework?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you're bringing up why, which is another component that I do with a lot of people. Are you familiar with Simon Sinek's, you know,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Power
And
of
I
why.
think, yeah, to know your why is really powerful in these kind of situations. So if you are spending a lot of time on, if you're a perfectionist, spending a lot of time on an email, which again, very, very common struggle is definitely real there are tools and techniques we can do, right? Like we can set a timer, we can come up with some strategies on how to, AI can do a lot of stuff for you now too that's helpful. But um there's some like tactical things, certainly. But the why you're doing it is the important. Is it because I'm worried that people are going to think I'm not intelligent or that I don't know what I'm doing or is it that I have a manager that's just a micromanager and that everything I say gets picked apart? And then, sometimes strategy is like less is more. Stop saying so much in your emails. Make it really concise. People don't read emails anyways. I have found time and time again, no matter how many times I try to craft the perfect one, you know, people will not read them. So the why is definitely important here of why you're doing it, because then you can address how to fix it.
Sure. Yeah. That it's getting to what is it that matters to you that then you're spending the time on. But what matters to you might actually be sucking your time and energy rather than giving it back to you. So it's like, is it a good mattering in that it's moving me forward? Or is it the mattering that's really a weight and I'm putting more into it than it's giving back?
Yes. Yes. 100%. I would say, similar to therapy, coaching fundamentally or at the foundation is about self-awareness. Why are you doing these things? Why are they important to you? And if they are not, then we can change them. But if they are, there still might be room to change. It's just a matter of figuring out again where those edges are that we can soften or move a little bit. I like to say everybody's got a bullseye. We're always trying to figure out what each person's individual bullseye is. So all the tools and techniques are flavors of each other, but they're not gonna, it depends on the person of why they're doing this stuff and what they're trying to get out of it.
Mhm. Or maybe someone's bullseye. What's an example?
Well, so I mentioned cognitive distortions earlier. People use different cognitive distortions at different times, right? Um, so a classic one is, let's say mind reading, right? I know what my boss is thinking. They think I'm an idiot. Or I know the board thinks that I'm not good enough to step into this next level. Well, what we're doing is we're trying to figure out how do we get to that reframe. I usually teach people a three-step process, right? You name it, you start to build a awareness of it, you check your evidence, do I have evidence for it? And then I get to a reframe. And so that process is the same three-step process, but I've seen people go at it from tons of different ways. And then some people can really hold on to a mantra or something at the end where they can have a shorthand of like, oh, this is my why, or this is why I'm doing this, reframe it. Okay, I'm back on track. And then other people have to get there a different way, right? They have to check with somebody else. They have to, hopefully that process gets smaller, but their bullseye might look like it has different added on features of that three-part kind of reframing that needs to happen.
So naming it, getting evidence for it, reframing it.
Mhm, mhm. So if I think my
Nice.
boss thinks I'm an idiot, that's I'm
Mm.
mind reading. I saw she sent this email or whatever. I know that that's what she thinks. I'm gonna check my evidence. Well, do I have evidence of that? Well, no, I have in that one meeting. She said this one thing that was odd, but she's also told me I'm really good at this. I got a good performance review, and you're checking all that evidence, which then gets you to reframe. Reframe, you want it's not a negative. Well, you're going from a negative, so you're not going to go from a negative to a positive. You're not going to go from like this sucks to like, oh, it's amazing, no problem whatsoever. But you can get to a neutral reframe. So while I'm aware there are things I need to work on. I don't right now have evidence that that's what she's thinking. I can check with her.
I like that because it's not invalidating some of the things that, like, okay, she said that one thing in the meeting, or it's, it's not completely, I was like, gaslighting ourselves into thinking that we need to think positively, but more like, what are other parts that could be happening to say that that's not the complete story here, that
Yes.
there's other evidence to support otherwise, and I don't have to buy this belief. Like, if this belief were a shirt, would I buy it? And if the answer is no, then reframe it.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And again, you're going to see like if sometimes a cognitive distortion is true. Like one of my examples is personalization. So say I see somebody leave a party and I'm like they left because they don't like me. Well, if I have no evidence that that's the case, then it's possibly cognitive distortion. But if I have had words with that person and I know that we do not like each other and they saw me and they turned and walked away, there's a good chance it's probably not a cognitive distortion, right? So your evidence piece is really kind of checking like I might have a little bit of evidence for it, but my overwhelming evidence is going to be against it, proving it.
Mm,
Correct.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. That it's taking the context matters.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the evidence part is like that's another way I describe it. Like your brain goes A to B, A to B. Thing happens, I respond this way. Thing happens, I respond. You have to send it from A to C. Thing happened, I'm responding this way. Thing happened, and the only way to get there is to catch it, which is that naming process. Check your evidence and get to the reframe. And that evidence piece is really kind of your brain starting to build that model for that pathway.
Mhm. Oh, this is great. So when you're working, so when you're working with, like, I'm thinking about executive C-suite people, and you're in the Bay Area. So what I also, you kind of mentioned, the guy in a t-shirt, who's now, got a $3 million investment from a Series A round or whatever it might be, right? And they're like, yeah, I'm 27 years old and I'm like rocking the world type of thing. But then it sounds like there's that confidence competence thing that comes up, and the how much confidence do I have? What are the competencies that I have to support this? And
Mhm.
there is that kind of feedback loop. So I'm wondering, when you're working with executives, and wondering kind of like the span, whether that's someone who's just starting out or someone who's been in the game for quite a while, how might they be going through that kind of feedback loop, if they are, of like, hey, I have all the confidence here, but maybe not the competencies, and vice versa?
Well, I think this actually comes up with another part of my niche, which is imposter syndrome. So we can see imposter syndrome get activated with a new job. So maybe that person in the C-suite moved from uh, you know, director level to COO or something like that. You're going to see confidence drop, even if outwardly they are confident looking. There's part of them that generally, at least the people I'm talking to, are worried that people are going to see, or that they got some negative feedback from somebody in that C-suite. When we're talking about the 27-year-old who is a founder, I think sometimes you have to look at like where I work mostly with these founders is not so there's different types of startups, right? So startups that are just built to get bought out, which is a lot of them. They build to get bought out and then there's a big payday and then they're done. And then they'll go on and they'll found the next company and the next one and the next one. And so they do have this over reliance on vision. I'm a visionary. I have an idea. That is a really hard C-suite, even no matter the age, to work with because their goal is really to get out of the business. Where my kind of skill set lies is helping people thrive at building a business, at growing into those leadership positions. So it's the people that actually want to kind of stick with it. So even the 27-year-old who they're going to see some gaps. Usually it's like people are leaving or somebody said this thing to me. And I'm not sure what that means. Like an investor said, like, you got a real problem here. I'm not sure what to do with that. And again, it usually comes down to interpersonal problems, right? They can't keep certain people on their payroll because they have such a high standard of what they think or a vision that they didn't set expectations around, some real kind of key things. So there is a wide range of where that's gonna lie. I don't know if that answers your question, but there's this, it's kind of a big spectrum there.
Yeah, that does answer it because especially, I mean, look, I was saying before we started recording, I just did Raleigh Durham Startup Week. And so it's interesting just to kind of be in the same room as some people who are building companies, especially in the age of AI and how it's all the buzz right now. And I got to go to a few different types of talks. So one was a politician and chief economist for OpenAI, Ryan Chatterjee. Like got to like see them talk. Got to see someone who built a business that was doing millions and then went bankrupt and then got to go to a talk on branding. And what's interesting of those three is the one where it was someone talking about how he had built this company that then went bankrupt. He was also a young founder, was doing vending machines, and then kept talking about how his mental health struggled and suffered and how he had to get a coach to help him through this because it felt like there was so much weight and just kind of like unforeseen things happening in the company that then he had a bankruptcy was the strategy but it felt like failure and like all these things that kind of come with it. And I think that something like that is very different than I've been in a company for 15 years to watch people grow to nurture this thing. Like one is very fast and furious and it's like we don't know where this game's going to go but we're hitting the ground running. And the other one is I'm playing the long game and a long vision and I have to kind of ensure that the strategies are intact for the long game.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's fundamentally it. And you can have people that are just starting out who want to get to that 15-year. But again, I wouldn't know the percentage, but I would imagine, it's pretty high percentage that want to just sell. I would also say too, there's, one thing we haven't touched on. We keep talking about it like as a male thing. Female founders and executives just have different things that come up around this. So there is a lot of like imposter syndrome that comes up. And sometimes like the coaching work I would do with women is slightly different than men, just because there is a flavor more of like, you do have to act like a man in some ways to, right? There is something called the double bind for women, where women can be likable or competent, but not both. Men get to be both. There's tons of research on this. And I think some of that is changing, but there's plenty of examples still that kind of are abound. So the strategies might be a little different for a woman in leadership around how do you navigate this in a more subtle way, whereas men can be a lot more direct and a lot more tactical about the way that they do this. Women have to be tactical still, but very like kind of strategic and subtle.
Yeah, that's another interesting point because you the term that just came to mind was because this is all over the internet and it has been for the past few years, the masculine feminine energy. And it's like, I need to be in my masculine because I'm in the C-suite executive type role in my company. And I think that you do kind of hear that because there's a lot of demand. There's an asserting dominance in these spaces for women because if their voice is going to be heard, it does have to be like, I have to double down to assert myself versus if I were a man that it might just be more natural that I get a voice in the room.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Research showed that time and time again. And again, I would love, I mean, have we made strides? Certainly, but yes, there is a subtle nuance between because women can't be as aggressive as men. They just can't because society doesn't like that. So we see people as well, she's got a shrill voice or she's so aggressive. Whereas if a man was doing the same thing, you'd be like, oh, good for him. Like another key area in the workspace that you see this is women will apply for jobs that are the same level as their job because they're like, oh, these are the skill sets that I have. And so I'm applying, and they don't always apply for like the stretch, but men do. And so when you're looking at pay gap wages, like one piece of it, it's a much more larger component, but one piece of this is actually this area of like women aren't actually stretching themselves because they're trying to go for like what they actually have, whereas men are like trained a little bit more to be like, so I will coach a lot of women about like, when they're applying for jobs or whatever, like, why aren't you going for that one? Why aren't you just, trying for these a bigger swing here, because that's really how you're going to get the pay increases and the title changes and all that kind of stuff versus those lateral.
Sure. To go after what you want.
Mhm, mhm. But
Yeah.
again, it's like this tricky little nuance of
There's so many nuances. Well, and because you're working, like, because we're talking about the workplace, there are so many nuances in the workplace. You have hierarchy, you have gender dynamics, you have interpersonal relationships, and I think the generational divide too just feels like it's more pronounced than ever. You have millennials versus Gen Z, millennials versus boomers versus Gen X. Like it's just a whole. It does feel like it's a whole thing in itself, more than ever before, at least in my view. So it does seem like that. There's so many micro cultural
yes.
elements that are happening under one organization that is designed ideally to have a shared mission and sense of alignment.
Yes, exactly. And the trick is how do you get all the people aligned to the same mission and the same kind of trajectory? And that's easier said than done. But
Sure.
I would argue that the differentiator is those nuances approaches. So if you've got somebody who's Gen Z, you're going to approach something with them slightly different than you might approach a millennial or a boomer or, each of these kind of groups, they're going to respond differently to different things, and so having some foresight about what you say, transparency wise, communication wise, those kinds of things really can help.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's and again, the kind of age of where we are, there's a lot of disruption in in the workplace for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
So whether that's in technology, AI that we've mentioned, and also like in gender dynamics, age dynamics, just all of it. I think that a lot of there's it seems like that there's been a lot of disruption.
Yes. Yes. And I think we're kind of at the cusp of like what this disruption. I mean, you and I were even talking about this around the therapy world and even the coaching lens. There's a lot of disruption that I think that is on the future here for a lot of professions, and it can be scary and overwhelming. And I think the people that learn as much as possible about how to navigate it are going to be the ones that do okay, hopefully.
Mhm.
That's the hope. But yeah, I think, I worry more about like my nephews are in high or one's about to go to college and one's in college. I worry more about like their future. Like what does that look like for them when they graduate and, what does the working world look like? Whatever they go into, what is that actually what's there for them?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because it feels very unknown at this point in time. It's
Yeah,
it's sort of a new industrial revolution.
it is. It
Yeah,
is. It is. And ripple effects.
for sure. Um, Real quick, because you and I were talking offline about kind of the coaching lens, because it seems like everyone on Instagram's a coach. so,
Right.
so it seems like so many people on LinkedIn are a coach.
Yep.
Um, so how you were just sharing some stats about coaching. When does it work? When does it not? What percentage of people are really going at it and succeeding in the coaching realm?
You mean like as coaches?
Yes.
The numbers are not great. So I don't know exactly what the percentage, it's under the 10% range of coaches that are actually doing well. I do think, the market is flooded. I do also think that AI can do a lot of the skill building stuff. So there is a lot of, like people use ChatGPT or Claude or whatever for, I hear this all the time, both in therapy and coaching circles around, well, I put in what I wanted to say to this person and the AI helped me figure it out. And I think some of those lenses are going to take a steeper cut, but I think coaching, at least in my perspective, so therapy tends to be a lot of more introverted people that tend to be a little bit more quiet about what the work they do. I mean, again, that's part of the reason I did my podcast is like to showcase all these amazing people that do this work. But coaching tends to be a lot more like, "Hi, I'm your coach." And it's like much more in your face. So we see a lot of it. But the reality is the numbers, I'd have to look it up. I'll look it up and afterwards and share it with you. But um, the numbers just don't prove that there is actually as big of a market. There's a handful of coaches that are doing well. And then there's majority that are not, because to your point, anybody can say they're a coach. It's a little bit of the wild, wild west. And there's everything from like spiritual coaching, which I still don't understand how you coach somebody spiritually, but whatever, there's coaching business for it. All the way to things like, executive coaching and things like that. So there's it's kind of really, it feels unregulated. It feels all over the place. And a lot of, I've done some of these coaching programs, even from like a marketing perspective. And I was like, really? This is the coaching? Like, this is not really coaching. This is like, I'm filling out a form and then you're like, what did you put on your form? And I'm like, I put this. And they're like, okay, sounds good. What did it's like, that's not coaching me. That's like literally I'm just filling out a worksheet and you're telling me about it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, the numbers don't show. And I've worked with a lot of coaches actually in therapy. And it's very similar to therapy in that it's like feast or famine, right? You're getting big contracts sometimes, and then you're getting nothing. And so the coaches that are successful, I think really what it comes down to is again that very like salesy, like in your face, spamming people, um, high end ticket numbers certainly, but for people like me, what I'm doing is more like networking. Like I have more of a boutique thing. I do have programs and things that I've kind of boiled down a lot of the stuff that you can do on your own. Um, so you don't always need me. You could just buy the program. That said,
Mhm.
it's really to all the things we've been saying before. It is really a nuanced approach because I think that that's actually where you get the benefit of coaching truly. If I'm just checking
Sure.
and doing cookie cutter stuff, yeah, fine. So I've seen some of these programs too. They scale and they get really big and then they crash because then it's like that trend went away or that thing. So to be, I've been doing this since 2017. So to be in it more sustained, you have to be kind of more working your networks. And um, again, you can spam people all you want, but is that really
Right.
work? I don't know. Good work.
Yeah. It could. But is it fulfilling, ethical, more, I don't know, moral? I don't know. Like, it feels something about it does feel kind of icky when you put it that way.
Yeah. And again, it's not really regulated. There's IFC, ICF. I always get those International Coaching Federation. I think it's ICF.
Yes.
They're trying to create some more, and like, but like for somebody like me, it's really annoying. I have enough hours to be a what is it, a professional coach, like on their tier of professional coach. But because I haven't been in a program that they approved prior to getting those, they won't count any of my hours. I'd be starting over. And it's like, what's the incentive for somebody like me who's been doing this for 10 years to start over with a credentialing program when I have, the experience and so eh,
Right. Your grad school, your license, all those things weren't enough. You gotta go do this other thing. Yeah.
yeah. And I got trained too through BetterHelp, who has or at least they used to, they have like a connection to ICF. And so some of the courses I'd take were like ICF certified courses, but they still wouldn't even accept those because I hadn't, spent thousands on a program that was one of their approved programs. Yeah,
It is all an MLM, I'm convinced.
very true. Very true.
Oh man, it is all some variation of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
coaching again is just the wild, wild west to me. It's anybody can do it. Anybody can say they are. And there's a lot of people that think it's going to be easy money, and that's just not the case. You got to be clear on what you want with it and where you want to
Mhm.
scale to, if at all. Um,
Right.
so
Yeah. Good to know. So, if where can people find you to work with you, whether that's therapy or coaching?
that's a great question. Thank you. Uh,
Of course.
well, so this is I think something that gets confusing for people is I do have two businesses. That's because I am licensed in California and now Colorado. Actually, I just passed the licensing exam to do telehealth in Colorado. I've got
Congratulations.
moving there, and I did go to Boulder for grad school, so I feel like it fits. But uh, so for therapy, you can find me at just my name, keelyspring.com. And then because I coach people outside of the state of California, now Colorado, I have to have a separate business to protect the therapy license, which is be a very annoying part because, it'd be great if they could just be one business. I would love that. So it's Spring Ahead Coaching, is the name of the coaching company is Spring Ahead. Play on the
Perfect.
last name. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
so great. I love when people have names that they can play on. Like, there's a Veronica Dress. She was on the podcast. She has the dress rehearsal because, and her last name is Dress. And I'm like, this is great. Like, I Spring Ahead Coaching. Like, I love that. Your name was built for this.
I know. I know. I know. I actually, when I got married, I didn't change my name, and I just gotten licensed like right before, and all my businesses, I was like, they're all like Spring.
Yeah.
So,
You're like, I can't. I'm too. I am.
it is, it is. People call it, and my husband's name is Andrews, so people call us the Andrews. I'm like, great, that's fine. But business wise, like the original Spring.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to leave people with?
No, I guess the only other thing I would say is that it really is about fit. Just like with therapists, it's about finding a right fit for you. I'm not the right fit for everybody in coaching, but there's definitely people that I'm well suited for. It's just about kind of figuring out what you're trying to get out of the coaching and who can help get you there.
Great. Yeah. Which, look, if you are looking for a good fit, also head over to Kelly's podcast, Therapeutically Aligned. You can also get to know her and other clinicians more a little bit there. And you also write a lot on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
So yeah, and we'll plug all that in the show notes too.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate
Of
it. Thank
course.
you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, anytime. And then until next time, everyone, stay connected and drink Larry's coffee. Again, link is in the show notes. All right. Bye.